My beloved child. Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a revelation that will shake something deep inside you, the kind of truth that doesn't just pass by but lingers, echoes, and forces you to see everything differently, because there was a moment, a silent turning point in your soulmate's life, when they truly believed they could replace you, yes, replace you. They convinced themselves that what they felt for you was temporary, that the connection they had with you was something they could recreate with someone else, someone easier, someone more available, someone who didn't challenge their soul the way you did, and in that moment, they stepped away from you, not always physically, sometimes emotionally, sometimes energetically, sometimes just by pulling back and pretending they didn't care as deeply as they actually did, and they began searching, exploring, testing the waters with other people, trying to fill the space that you once occupied so naturally, so effortlessly, and at first, it seemed to work, at least on the surface. They laughed with someone else, they shared moments, they tried to convince themselves that this was enough, that this was what they needed, that this was better because it felt simpler, less intense, less overwhelming. But what they didn't realize, what they completely underestimated, was the depth of what they had with you. Because you were never just another person in their life, you were the mirror that reflected their truth. You were the energy that awakened parts of them they didn't even know existed. You were the connection that went beyond logic, beyond timing, beyond circumstance, and that kind of bond cannot be replaced. It can only be ignored for a while, and so as time passed, something began to feel off for them, something didn't sit right, the conversations felt shallow, the laughter felt forced, the connection felt incomplete, like a puzzle missing its most important piece, and no matter how much they tried to add, just to settle, to convince themselves that this new situation was enough, there was always this quiet voice inside them whispering your name, reminding them of what they had lost, reminding them of you, your energy, your presence, the way you understood them without words, the way you challenged them to grow, the way you made them feel seen in a way no one else ever could. And this is where the shock begins. Because they didn't expect this, they didn't expect to feel this emptiness, this longing, this undeniable pull back toward you. They thought they had control, they thought they could move on, they thought they could replace you, but instead, they found themselves comparing everyone to you, measuring every interaction against what they had with you, and realizing, slowly but surely, that no one else even came close. And this realization didn't come all at once, it crept in, quietly, persistently, until it became impossible to ignore, until it reached a point where they had to face the truth, a truth that shook them to their core. You were never replaceable, you were never just an option, you were the connection, the standard, the one they couldn't recreate no matter how hard they tried. And imagine the weight of that realization. Imagine understanding that you let go of something irreplaceable, that you walked away from something rare, something real, something deeply aligned. And now you're standing there surrounded by substitutes that only remind you of what you lost. That is the outcome that shocked them, not just that they couldn't replace you, but that in trying to do so, they only proved how significant you truly are, how deeply you impacted them, how permanently you changed them. And now they are left with this awareness, this clarity that they didn't have before, this understanding that what they felt for you wasn't something ordinary, it was something rare, something powerful, something that doesn't come around often. And This is where your power lies, because while they were trying to replace you, you were evolving, growing, becoming stronger, becoming more aligned with your true self, and without even realizing it, you were stepping into a version of yourself that is even more magnetic, even more undeniable. And now the energy has shifted, now the roles have changed, now they are the one looking back, reflecting, questioning their decisions, wondering what could have been if they had chosen differently. And this doesn't mean you should wait, it doesn't mean you should pause your life for them, because your journey is yours, your growth is yours, your path is yours, but it does mean that you should understand your worth, truly understand it, not just intellectually but deeply, emotionally, energetically, because you were never someone who could be replaced, you were someone who leaves an imprint, someone who transforms lives, someone who becomes unforgettable, and that's why they couldn't move on the way they thought they would. That's why their attempt to replace you became the very thing that revealed your value to them, and now they are dealing with the consequences of that realization, the awareness that they let go of something extraordinary, and whether they come back or not, whether they reach out or not, whether your paths cross again or not, the truth remains the same, you are irreplaceable, and the moment you fully embrace that, the moment you truly step into that understanding, everything changes, the way you carry yourself, the way you see yourself, the way others perceive you, because energy doesn't lie, and when you know your worth, when you embody it, when you live it, it radiates outward in a way that cannot be ignored, and this entire situation, this entire experience, was never meant to break you, it was meant to reveal you, to show you who you are, to remind you of your power, to push you into alignment with your highest self, and now that you see it, now that you understand it, you can move forward with clarity, with confidence, with a sense of purpose that is unshakable, because you are no longer questioning your value, you are no longer seeking validation, you are no longer wondering if you were enough, you know you were, you know you are, and you know you always will be, and that is the truth that changes everything, not just for you, but for them as well. Because in trying to replace you, they discovered something they never expected, they discovered that you are one of a kind, and that realization will stay with them, whether they admit it or not, whether they act on it or not, it will remain, a quiet, persistent truth that echoes in their mind, reminding them of you, reminding them of what they lost, and reminding them that some connections are simply too powerful to be replaced. And now something even deeper begins to unfold, because the story didn't end when they realized you couldn't be replaced. That was only the beginning of a much more intense internal shift that they were not prepared for, because once that truth settled into their heart, it didn't just sit there quietly, it started to grow, it started to expand, it started to take over their thoughts in ways they couldn't control. And suddenly the same person who once convinced themselves that they could move on without you is now haunted by the very presence they tried to escape, not in a negative way, but in a way that constantly reminds them of what is real and what is not, and every interaction they have now feels like a comparison they never intended to make, every conversation feels like something is missing, every moment of silence feels louder than before because it echoes with your absence. And this is where the pressure builds inside them. Because it's one thing to lose someone, but it's another thing entirely to realize that you lost someone irreplaceable by your own choice, by your own actions, and that awareness creates a kind of emotional weight that cannot be ignored. It follows them into quiet moments, into late nights, into times when they are alone with their thoughts and there's no distraction left to hide behind, and in those moments, they begin to replay everything, every conversation, every memory, every moment where they could have chosen differently, where they could have stayed, where they could have been honest, where they could have acknowledged the depth of what they felt for you instead of running from it. And now those memories don't just feel like the past, they feel like lessons, like missed opportunities, like chances that may never come again, and this realization begins to humble them in a way nothing else ever has, because before, they operated from a place of assumption. They assumed you would always be there, they assumed the connection would always exist no matter what they did. They assumed they had time, and now they are faced with the possibility that they were wrong, that they miscalculated something deeply important, and that kind of realization shifts a person at their core. It strips away ego, it removes illusions, it forces them to see things clearly whether they want to or not, and as this clarity grows, something else starts to happen, something they didn't expect. They begin to feel a pull toward you again, not just emotionally, but energetically, almost like something inside them is trying to reconnect, trying to realign, trying to bridge the gap that they themselves created, and this pull becomes stronger over time, not weaker, because it's rooted in truth, and truth doesn't fade, it intensifies when it is ignored. And now they are in a position they never imagined they would be in. They are the one thinking about reaching out. They are the one wondering if it's too late. They are the one questioning whether you would even respond, whether you would even care anymore, whether you have already moved on in ways they couldn't, and this uncertainty is something they never experienced before when it came to you, because before, they felt secure in your presence, they felt certain of your connection, they felt like you were a constant, and now that certainty is gone, replaced by doubt, replaced by questions, replaced by the realization that they no longer have control over how this story unfolds. And that loss of control is deeply uncomfortable for them, because it forces them to confront the consequences of their actions in a very real way, and at the same time, you are not the same person you were when they left. You have shifted, you have grown, you have healed in ways they don't fully understand yet, and that change in you is something they can feel even from a distance, because your energy is no longer tied to waiting. It's no longer centered around them, it's grounded, it's stable, it's focused on your own path, and that creates a completely different dynamic, because now, if they want to come back into your life, they have to meet you at a higher level, they have to approach you with a different mindset, a different level of honesty, a different level of emotional maturity, and this is where things become truly intense for them, because they are no longer dealing with the version of you that tolerated uncertainty. They are now facing the version of you that understands your worth, that recognizes your value, that will not accept anything less than what you deserve, and this realization both attracts and intimidates them at the same time, because on one hand, they feel drawn to you more than ever, but on the other hand, they are aware that they can no longer approach you casually, they can no longer take you for granted, they can no longer assume that things will just fall back into place the way they once did. And this creates a moment of decision for them, a moment where they have to choose whether they are willing to rise to the level required to reconnect with you or whether they will remain where they are and continue to live with the knowledge of what they lost. And this decision is not easy, because it requires them to face themselves honestly, to acknowledge their past behavior, to take responsibility for the choices they made, and not everyone is ready to do that. Not everyone is willing to go that deep. But the truth is, the connection they had with you was never something shallow, it was never something temporary, it was always something that required growth, something that required evolution, something that required both people to step into their highest selves. And now that they have seen what life feels like without you, now that they have experienced the emptiness of trying to replace something that cannot be replaced, they are beginning to understand what that connection truly meant. And this understanding is what will ultimately guide their next move, whether they act on it or not, whether they reach out or not, whether they find the courage to face you again or not. The shift has already happened within them, and once that shift occurs, it cannot be undone. It becomes a part of who they are, a part of their awareness, a part of their understanding of love, connection, and what truly matters. And at the same time, your journey continues forward, not backward, not paused, not waiting, but moving, expanding, evolving into something even greater. And that is where your true power lies, not in whether they return, not in whether they choose to act on their realization, but in the fact that you have become someone who no longer needs validation from someone else to feel complete, someone who understands that your value does not depend on anyone else's recognition, someone who knows that what you bring into a connection is rare, powerful, and deeply meaningful. And when you fully step into that awareness, when you fully embody that truth, you become unstoppable in a way that cannot be shaken by external circumstances, because your foundation is internal, your confidence is self-generated, your worth is self-defined, and that changes everything, not just for you, but for anyone who crosses your path, including the one who once thought they could replace you, because now, they are faced with a reality they cannot ignore. You were never replaceable, and now, you are also no longer reachable in the same way you once were, unless they truly evolve, and that is the outcome they never saw coming, not just losing you, but realizing that to even have a chance with you again, they would have to become a completely different version of themselves, and that is a level of transformation that not everyone is ready for, but the awareness of it, the understanding of it, will stay with them no matter what they choose to do next. And now everything reaches the point where illusion completely breaks and truth stands alone, because what your soulmate is experiencing at this stage is no longer confusion, it is no longer denial, it is no longer distraction, it is a raw and undeniable awareness that cannot be silenced no matter how hard they try. Because every path they explored, every person they entertained, every attempt they made to rewrite their story without you has led them back to the same realization again and again. That what they had with you was not ordinary, it was not something that could be duplicated, it was not something that could be replaced by effort or time or convenience, and this truth begins to reshape them in ways they never expected. Because now they are not just thinking about you, they are understanding you, they are understanding the depth of your presence in their life, the way you impacted them, the way you challenged them, the way you revealed parts of them that no one else ever touched. And with that understanding comes a wave of emotion that is both powerful and overwhelming, because it carries regret, it carries longing, it carries a deep sense of realization that they let something rare slip through their hands, and this is where the true shock settles in, not the initial surprise of missing you, but the lasting awareness that they cannot undo what has been done, that time has moved, that you have moved, that life has continued forward without waiting for them to catch up. And this creates a kind of urgency within them that feels almost unbearable at times, because now they are caught between what they feel and what they fear. They feel the pull toward you stronger than ever before, but they also fear that they may have lost their place in your life completely, that the version of you they once knew is no longer available to them in the same way. And this fear is not imaginary, it is rooted in reality, because you have changed, you have grown. You have stepped into a new level of self-awareness that does not allow you to accept half-hearted energy anymore. You are no longer the person who waits for someone to recognize your value. You are the person who embodies it fully, and this shift in you creates a completely different dynamic, because now, if they choose to approach you, they cannot do it from a place of comfort or assumption. They have to do it from a place of truth, from a place of vulnerability, from a place of genuine transformation. And that is something that requires courage, something that requires them to confront not just their feelings for you, but their own shortcomings, their own fears, their own patterns that led them to walk away in the first place. And this is where the final turning point begins to form, because they are faced with a decision that will define everything that comes next. They can either remain where they are, holding on to the awareness of what they lost but doing nothing about it, or they can step forward, take responsibility, and attempt to rebuild something that once meant everything to them. But here is the truth that changes everything for you. Their decision no longer controls your path, their actions no longer define your worth, their realization no longer determines your future, because you have already stepped into your power, you have already reclaimed your energy, you have already become someone who does not rely on external validation to feel complete. And that is the true transformation in this entire story, not just their awakening, but yours. Because while they were busy trying to replace you, you were becoming someone who cannot be replaced at all, not just in their life, but in any space you enter. And this is where everything shifts in your favor completely, because now, whether they come back or not, whether they reach out or not, whether they find the courage to face you again or not, you remain whole, you remain powerful. You remain aligned with your highest self. And this creates a kind of freedom that is rare and undeniable, because you are no longer attached to a specific outcome, you are open to what is meant for you, you are grounded in who you are, and you trust that whatever is truly aligned with you will find its way into your life naturally, without force, without confusion, without compromise. And if they are meant to return, if they are meant to be a part of your life again, they will have to meet you at this level. They will have to show up differently. They will have to prove through their actions that they have truly changed, not just through words, not just through temporary emotion, but through consistent effort, through genuine growth, through a willingness to build something real and stable. And if they cannot do that, if they are not ready for that level of connection, then they will remain a lesson, a chapter that shaped you but did not define you, a memory that contributed to your growth but did not limit your future. And this is the final truth that stands at the end of this journey: you were never meant to be replaced, you were meant to be realized, understood, and valued. And the moment someone fails to see that is the moment they begin to lose access to you, not because you disappeared, but because you evolved beyond the version of yourself that accepted less than you deserved. And that evolution is your greatest power, because it ensures that no matter what happens, no matter who comes or goes, you remain aligned with your truth, your worth, and your purpose, and that is something no one can ever take away from you, not even the one who once believed they could replace you, because in the end, they didn't just fail to replace you, they uncovered a truth that will stay with them forever, that some people are not meant to be replaced, they are meant to be recognized, and once that recognition comes too late, it becomes a lesson that echoes for a lifetime.